The drum began to beat in the temple of Hanmanta. Everyone began to run like crazy and within the blink of an eye disappeared in the various mirrors around. Mallari and Raghuvanna backed and got lost as if there was an invisible door in a mirror nearby. Chandeliers, domes, and the tall lamps began to extinguish one by one. Bhairu stood alone as if frozen, but soon his legs caught the wind because of fear and he began to run fast. On his way, he quickly picked up a golden plate, but when he could not hide it behind the flap of his jacket, he picked up 2 smaller dishes, 3 or 4 bowls, and 2 tall lamps, and began to run towards the only remaining mirror with his coal-rimmed eyes. By the time he reached there, the adjoining tall lamp went off and the mirror disappeared. Bhairu collided with a tree and with a searing pain collapsed. Then the dawn broke and the light spilled on to various patches of the unruly grass in the graveyard. This is a paragraph from the story Coal in the collection Kajalmaya or Realm of Darkness. Welcome to the 79th episode of Granthyatra. Today we are going to discuss this collection of stories by G A Kulkarni that have a strange mixture of realism and fantasy. Gurunath Abaji Kulkarni was born in 1923 in Belgaum. After completing his school and college education in Belgaum, he moved to Dharwad where he joined JSS College as the professor of English. A few early stories written by G A Kulkarni were published in the well-known periodical Satyakatha. When his first collection of stories, Nila Savla or Blue Black, was published in 1959, the strength of his writing became apparent. In all, he wrote 13 collections of stories, letters containing deep philosophical contemplations, light essays, and some autobiographical writing. He brought about fundamental changes in the essence of stories and gave a new direction to the Marathi short story. His 5th collection, Kajalmaya, was published in 1972. The stories in this collection fall under 2 broad categories: those that pertain to realistic descriptions of the lives of people who have been defeated by their circumstances, and those that are allegorical fantasies describing mysterious and extrasensory experiences. Through both these types of stories, G.A., as he was fondly called by Marathi readers, unravels the folly of life, the inevitability of destiny, interpersonal affections, and at the same time, extreme hatred that can exist between individuals. Let us first look at the realistic stories in this collection. The protagonist of the tale Pradakshina or circumambulation is Shantakka, who has been betrayed by her own people. She had been a victim of premarital rape by her husband, who was a famous and successful leader. After his death, she realizes that he had relations with her own sister and that he had fed lies to her son and sister to maintain his clean image in their minds, and that he had meted out injustice to herself and his brother all his life. Yet, she felt the planets in her horoscope must have smirked at her fate when it was written. What sins had she committed whose footprints were imprinted on her life, she wonders. In the tale The Last Green Leaf, we meet Sitakka, who nurses a deep sorrow and lives in a dilapidated room in her crumbling ancestral mansion. She is convinced that her own relative Parvati had poisoned her son to death. She is burning with a desire for revenge ever since, and yet she has tender feelings for Parvati's young daughter. She is tempted to see her newborn baby. But when she meets the new mother and her baby, the feeling of revenge flares up in her mind. Jayu jerked away her hand. Now her back is permanently turned against me. Sitakka felt utterly exposed and lonely, as if this last green leaf had been shed. The story lineage describes the grief of Kareva, who has been insulted as a barren woman. She remembers the antidote narrated by her mother, who had renounced the world. She prepares her mind to undertake the fearsome ritual. When a mendicant tries to molest her in the dark, she hits him with her iron club. That is when a truth dawns on her mind like a lightning. In the tale The Butcher, Sonu has built a small house in his village after years of hard labor. His wife's relative, who is visiting from Mumbai, lures Sonu's family with the dreams of the city. Sonu's wife and children turn impatient to move to Mumbai. Sonu, on the other hand, is an easy prey in the hands of Keshav Rao, who has craftily cast his net for his own profit. In the tale Whirlpool, we meet Gopal, who is caught between gratitude for his sister and the dreams of his wife and daughter. Desecration of man by destiny is the focus of this tale. A loving Namutai, who has sacrificed all her life for her family, has now gone partially insane because of the illness of her only son. Gopal's wife is distraught as she watches Gopal's meager salary being wasted on containing his sister's insanity instead of being used for fulfilling the wishes of her own daughter. Gopal, on the other hand, is fraught between his sense of duty for his sister and his guilt of not being able to do justice by his wife and daughter. It's a familiar picture in many households. While these tales bring in a feeling of despondency through their transparent characterization, the fantasy tales in this volume leave us fearfully astonished. The protagonist of the tale Kol is the miserable priest Bhairu. He is a victim of injustice by his brothers and betrayal by his wife and daughter. He believes that black magic would help him find the truth about how he was cheated. When he visits the graveyard to experiment with some occult practices, he has an extraordinary experience there before his death. In the tale Dream, the author introduces us to the home of the Joshi family located in a remote place. The nomadic tribe that lives close by, the torrential rains at night, lightning striking the tree near Joshi's house, and the dreamlike experience of the protagonist in the crumbling house. All people are living in my dream. They will be obliterated from the blackboard if I open my eyes. But then, who knows? I too may be living in the dreams of each one of them. In the story Messenger, the protagonist is the messenger sent by the emperor with a message to his subjects. The prince and the priest who covet power are his enemies. When the messenger suffers from amnesia and forgets the emperor's message, both the prince and the priest torture him mercilessly. When he is half dead, he is thrown on the crematorium ground. That is when crematorium worker, who had been torturing him all day on the orders of his masters, assists him, and the messenger remembers the emperor's message. But the final twist in the tale reveals the fateful nature of the emperor's orders. The protagonist in the tale Spot is old Ramanna, who is left alone after his children leave the village in search of better prospects. A faraway spot on a hill arouses Ramanna's curiosity, and he sets out in search of the temple that is believed to exist there. On the way, he meets several mysterious and strange persons. In the end, he sees the awe-inspiring and fearsome temple. The temple before him looked gigantic, tall, and brilliant. The entire sky was occupied by its dazzling white light, tinged with the scarlet glow of the evening. On seeing its enormous expanse, he felt as if the temple was bent over him, and he lost the strength in his hands and feet. The quest for impossible things is a repeated allegory in G.A.'s stories. In search of these alluring objects, the protagonist roams like a possessed person without caring for his life and endures hardships and even torment. In the end, even acquiring those objects turns meaningless. This symbolizes man's search for the mirage called happiness. Yet, it is not man's fault, for he doesn't have the freedom of choice in the first place. In the tale Slave, we meet the traveler who has been wandering tirelessly in search of Al-Edin, spurred by his greed for diamonds the size of coconuts. The plot of the story revolves around the slave acquired from Emra, the traveler's betrayal by his slave, and the revelation about the slave's true identity when the traveler reaches Al-Adin. The story puppet develops on the backdrop of a primordial civilization. Red Eagle's deception of the brave, adventurous but superstitious tribe for his own selfish gains, his remorse in the face of death, his futile efforts to enlighten the tribe, and the repetition of his deception is revealed gradually through the story. The concepts of virtue may be different for different tribes, but within each tribe, there is such an incessant emphasis on these virtues that right from childhood, our opinions are molded according to them. We become slaves to those thoughts. The tale jester completely alters the concept of truth. Every character in the story, especially its protagonist, the court jester, believes that he or she knows the truth. And with the revelation for each of these persons, it peels a layer of the reality. However, just as the horizon keeps eluding even when a person may pursue it endlessly, the truth in this story keeps eluding its characters. Critic Bhalchandra Phadke says that G.A. loves short story as a form of writing because he finds the challenge that it poses to creativity alluring. The act of writing is a quest for him. Like the famous Russian writer Dostoevsky, G.A. too likes to contemplate about the ultimate reality of human life. His stories depict the pitiable human predicament in a senseless world. Several stories of G A Kulkarni have contemplation on death. In the story, yet again, he writes, "But what exactly will happen when I die? I will have to give up these arms and legs and eyes. Everything that I see before me now will be obliterated. Is that all? All the things dear to me, all my attachments will be left behind, and I will have no ties with anything or anyone. Complete darkness with not even a scratch of light, total void. Neither anger nor greed, no desire, despair or jealousy. All quiet, still, formless, limitless, infinite." In the story Jewel, the writer comments on the endless cycle of life and death. The overpowering joy of the creativity of birth is stalled by the knowledge of death, while the ghastly concept of death needs the flag of hope for genesis. He feels that birth is the gateway to infinite pain. He is surprised that these innocent souls strive for transient allure of joy even when repressed by inevitable pain, that they weave foolish dreams for uncertain, cunning future. He does not believe that man has the freedom of choice. In the tale Jewel, he writes, "It is an illusion to believe that you could have gone to any other place instead of coming here. You came here not because you had the freedom to choose to come here, but because it was inevitable. Even the belief that you have this freedom of choice is inevitable, because the illusion created by this belief enables the conceited cycle to make you revolve with itself with ease." Even nature in G.A.'s stories reflects his philosophy of life. He describes the trees lining a seashore as palms with enormous leaves like the wings of a gigantic bird. He describes the lush green forest as monochromatic, super strong, fierce woods where hot, moist vapor breathes day and night, and where it's green all around. When describing its flora and fauna, he writes, "The red and yellow birds glimpsed like flares of a sudden pain in its green hue, and the gigantic serpents adorned with patterns that moved silently over the titanic branches of trees, extinguishing them one by one." G.A.'s language flows with a rich splendor which also underlines the emptiness of life at the same time. Look at this paragraph. Not that he didn't find any jewels in his ceaseless wanderings. The amber that displayed the heavenly light of the shower of fire and blood when Lord Rudra danced and the directions collapsed at the apocalypse. The tiger gem that looked like a window to some magical world. The blue sapphire that created an illusion of all poison of the world having been concentrated in a drop. And the fire opal that induced the fear that its golden radiance would soon blast into burning fire. He had picked up all these gems with great expectations, but had thrown them away with extreme despair. None of those deceiving gems had the soul of light that he was looking for. We have with us today writer and critic Anjali Patwardhan, who will tell us more about this extraordinary writer.
G A कुलकर्णींचं हे जन्मशताब्दी वर्ष. काजळमाया हा G A कुलकर्णींचा अतिशय महत्त्वाचा कथासंग्रह. व्यक्तिरेखांच्या मनात खोल शिरून त्यांचं सूक्ष्म चित्रण करण्यात जीएनचा हातखंडा होता आणि हे त्यांचं सामर्थ्य होतं. जीएनची कथा 1960 नंतर मराठी कथा विश्वात दाखल झाली. नवकथेनी जरी कथानक नाकारलेलं असलं तरी जीएनच्या कथेला मात्र कथानकही होतं आणि त्यांच्या कथेत मनोविश्लेषणही होतं. काजळमयामधली प्रदक्षिणा ही जी कथा आहे ती जीएनच्या कथा रचना कौशल्याचा एक उत्तम नमुना आहे. जीएननी विशिष्ट जीवन दृष्टिकोनातून ही कथा साकारलेली असली तरी त्या कथेची रचना त्यांनी अशा पद्धतीने केली आहे की त्या शांताक्का या व्यक्तिरेखेला अस्तित्ववादाकडे शून्यवादाकडे नेणारी ती कथा रचना आहे. शांताक्का तरुण असताना त्यांच्यावर बलात्कार होतो आणि ज्या व्यक्तीने बलात्कार केलेला असतो ती राजकीय नेता असते. तो माणूस कधीच जगाच्या समोर येत नाही, पण बलात्कार दुसरा कोणीतरी केला आहे आणि तरीही मी मोठ्या मनाने शांताक्कांशी लग्न करतो आहे असा आव तो माणूस आणतो आणि शांताक्कांच्या बहिणीशी त्याचे संबंध असतात. ते संबंध मात्र चालू राहतात आणि लग्नानंतर तो शांताक्कांना स्पर्श सुद्धा करत नाही. अतिशय म्हणजे शांताक्का या व्यक्तिरेखेला एकटं करण्यासाठी ज्यांनी ह्या कथेची रचना कशी केली आहे पहा. आणि नंतर त्या बलात्कारातून जन्मलेला जो मुलगा असतो तो पण शांताक्कांपासून दुरावतो, त्यांची बहीणही त्यांच्यापासून दुरावते, एकूण त्या एकट्याच होतात. आणि तो माणूस गेल्यानंतर सुद्धा हे सत्य जगासमोर येत नाही आणि तो कुणीतरी महान होता म्हणून त्याचा पुतळा उभारला जातो. खरं तर ही सामाजिक विसंगती आहे, ती सुद्धा जीएननी या कथेतून समोर आणली आहे. विदुषक ही जी कथा आहे ती रूपक कथा आहे, पण या रूपक कथेमध्ये सुद्धा जीएनच्या प्रतिभेचा विलास आपल्याला बघायला मिळतो. आपण थक्क होतो त्या कथेची रचना बघून. आणि म्हणूनच विश्राम बेडेकर असं म्हणाले होते की या एका कथेसाठी जीएनना नोबेल पारितोषिक मिळायला हवं. तर अशा या अनन्यसाधारण प्रतिभा लाभलेल्या G A कुलकर्णींना त्यांच्या जन्मशताब्दी वर्षाच्या निमित्ताने विनम्र आदरांजली अर्पण करते.
G A Kulkarni received the Sahitya Academy Award for his collection Kajalmaya. However, when there was criticism about the choice, he returned the award along with the travel reimbursement that he had received. Several of his stories were translated into other languages. The book Niyatidan, edited by M.D. Hatkananglekar and Nishikant-Mirajkar, contains Hindi translations of some of his stories. Dr. Vilas Salunkhe has translated G.A.'s stories into English in 3 volumes named A Journey Forever, Shadows in the Desert, and Vidushak and Other Stories. Do read the book Kajalmaya that created a new milestone in the development of Marathi short story. We shall meet again in the next episode of Granthyatra to know about some endearing poems. Until then, keep reading.